Late night at Novacore Systems, floor 27. Red warnings everywhere. The main server system is crashing. 30 engineers running in chaos. The CEO screaming, "If this goes down, we lose 100 million. Near the door stands a single dad, maintenance uniform, hands dusty, holding a toolbox. The CEO turns, cold smile. "If you're a genius, fix it." The room erupts in laughter. He sets down his toolbox, steps to the control panel, types a few commands. 2 minutes later, every warning disappears. Systems stabilize. Dead silence. The CEO stares at the screen, then at him, disbelief in her eyes. His name is Ethan Cole, 37 years old, single dad. He works maintenance at Novacore Systems. Infrastructure, electrical repairs, contract worker. The kind of guy people walk past without noticing. At home, he has a daughter, Mia, 9 years old. She loves drawing robots, dreams of helping daddy fix the whole world someday. His wife passed away 3 years ago. Cancer. The medical bills buried him. He lost everything trying to save her. Now, he works double shifts, fixes cables during the day, studies programming at night, teaches himself system architecture from free online courses. Nobody at Novacore knows any of this. To them, he's just the maintenance guy. Novacore Systems is a tech giant. They provide real-time payment processing for millions of transactions every second. Banks, e-commerce platforms, financial institutions worldwide. They're rolling out a massive system upgrade. If it fails, they lose hundreds of millions. And their reputation. The CEO is Adriana Blake, 34 years old, sharp, confident, Ivy League educated. She built her career working with the best engineers money can buy. Stanford grads, MIT talent. She respects credentials. Maintenance workers? To her, they're invisible. That morning, Ethan was fixing an electrical panel near the server room. He overheard the engineering team complaining. "This new architecture is layered wrong. We didn't test it enough, but the CEO wants it launched early." Ethan listened quietly. He recognized the problem immediately. The system design had a fatal flaw. One of the engineers walked past. Ethan spoke up. "If the load spikes suddenly and the queue doesn't throttle properly, it's going to crash." The engineer stopped, looked at him, laughed. "Hey man, just worry about fixing those wires. Leave the real work to us." Another engineer chimed in. "Yeah, no offense, but you wouldn't understand this stuff." Ethan said nothing. He went back to his work. Tightened the cable connections, closed the panel. But he knew exactly what was coming. That evening, he picked up Mia from after-school care. She showed him her latest drawing, a robot with a cape. "This is you, Daddy. You fix broken things." Ethan smiled, tired but warm. "I try, sweetheart." She looked at him with those big, trusting eyes. "You're the smartest person I know." He wished the rest of the world saw him that way. Later that night, his phone buzzed. Emergency message from Novacore. "All available technical staff report to headquarters immediately. System failure." Ethan dropped Mia at his neighbor's place, rushed to the office. When he arrived, chaos. Floor 27 was a war zone, engineers running everywhere. Screens flashing red, phones ringing nonstop. Panic in every voice. The system upgrade had gone live 2 hours ago. Now, it was collapsing under real-world traffic. Payment transactions were failing, major clients were calling. Millions of dollars disappearing into digital limbo. Ethan was told to check the electrical systems and server room temperature. Basic stuff. He walked in, saw the main dashboard, studied it for 60 seconds. He saw exactly what was wrong. The same issue he warned about that morning. He spoke quietly to a nearby engineer. "Why did you deploy straight to live without splitting the traffic first?" The engineer glanced at him, annoyed. "You can read dashboards. I thought you only read circuit breakers." Another engineer laughed. "Stick to your lane, buddy." Ethan said nothing, but inside, he knew he could fix this in minutes. The question was whether anyone would let him. The crisis deepened fast. Midnight. The system was dying in real time. CPU usage spiking to 98%, latency climbing into dangerous territory, error messages flooding every screen. Major banking partners were calling nonstop. Furious, panicked. Our customers can't complete transactions. Fix this now or we pull the contract. The entire 27th floor had turned into a battlefield. Engineers were rolling back updates, failed. They tried hot fixes, made it worse. Senior developers were shouting commands. Junior engineers scrambling to execute. Nothing worked. The system was bleeding out, and nobody could stop it. Ethan was standing near the cooling system, watching, listening. He'd been told to monitor the server room temperature, make sure nothing overheated. But his eyes kept drifting to the main dashboard. He could see the problem clearly, like reading a map everyone else was holding upside down. The traffic routing was looped. The queue system was deadlocked. The fallback servers were misconfigured. 3 fatal errors running simultaneously. He stepped closer to one of the senior engineers. If you reroute the traffic temporarily and isolate the bogey segment, you could stabilize it. The engineer turned, stared at him like he'd just spoken a foreign language. What? The traffic routing. You need to split it before... Dude, you're maintenance. Stay in your lane. Another engineer overheard, shook his head. Man thinks he understands distributed systems because he plugged in some Ethernet cables. They laughed, turned back to their screens. Ethan said nothing, stepped back. Then the door slammed open. CEO Adriana Blake walked in. She looked exhausted, furious. Phone in hand, eyes scanning the room like a general surveying a losing battle. Status report, now. The lead engineer stammered. We're working on it. How long? Silence. Nobody wanted to answer that question. One engineer finally spoke up. We're doing everything we can. Adriana's jaw tightened. That's not an answer. She looked around the room, at the 30 engineers who were supposed to be the best, at the screens full of red warnings, at the millions of dollars evaporating every minute. Her company was dying, and nobody could save it. Ethan was still standing near the air conditioning unit, toolbox at his feet, eyes on the dashboard. He muttered under his breath, barely audible. If they just isolate the segment, reroute through the secondary cluster, disable the new feature flag. But Adriana heard him. She turned, looked directly at him. Excuse me, who are you? An engineer answered for him. That's just maintenance. He's here to check the cooling system. Adriana's eyes stayed on Ethan. And you have something to say about my system architecture? The room went quiet, everyone watching. Ethan hesitated, then spoke. I'm just saying, if you reroute the traffic temporarily and isolate the segment causing the crash, you might be able to... Adriana cut him off with a bitter laugh. Great, just great. She looked around at her team, then back at Ethan. Her voice dripped with sarcasm. 30 engineers with 6-figure salaries can't fix this, but the guy who mops the server room floor thinks he can? A few people laughed nervously. Adriana stepped closer, arms crossed. Okay, I'll bite. She gestured toward an empty workstation. If you're a genius, fix it. The room erupted in laughter. Some people shook their heads. Others whispered to each other. One engineer muttered loud enough for Ethan to hear. This is embarrassing. Another added, let him play around for a minute. Maybe he'll learn some respect. Adriana's expression was cold, mocking. You've got 3 minutes. Entertain us. Ethan stood there, toolbox still at his feet, hands dusty from hours of physical work. He looked at the dashboard one more time. The patterns were crystal clear to him. He'd seen systems like this before. He'd built systems like this before. He could fix this, easily. But these people had spent the entire night dismissing him, laughing at him, treating him like he was invisible. For a moment, he considered walking away. Then he thought about Mia, her drawing of him as a robot with a cape, her voice saying, you're the smartest person I know. He thought about all the times he'd been pushed aside, ignored, underestimated. Not because he lacked skill, but because he lacked a fancy title. He took a breath. I tried to stay quiet. He set down his toolbox, pulled off his work gloves, walked toward the empty console. One of the engineers stepped in front of him. Hey, you're not authorized to. Ethan looked him in the eye. Right now, we're not protecting authorization levels. We're saving the system. The engineer hesitated, looked at Adriana. She waved her hand dismissively. Let him. I want to see this. Ethan sat down, pulled the keyboard closer, opened the terminal. His fingers started moving. Commands flew across the screen. Fast, precise. The kind of commands that most of the engineers in the room had never seen combined that way. Adriana stood behind him, arms still crossed, that mocking smile still on her face. Clock's ticking, genius. Ethan didn't respond. He just kept typing. The room watched in silence. Some people were curious. Most were skeptical. Nobody expected what happened next. Type fix if you want to see how he outdid 30 engineers. Ethan's fingers moved across the keyboard like he'd done this 1,000 times before. Because he had. First command. He created a temporary route to redirect 60% of the traffic away from the failing cluster. The senior engineer behind him scoffed. That'll spike the CPU on the secondary servers. You'll crash those too. Ethan didn't look up. Not if you adjust the load balancer threshold first. He typed another command. The load balancer reconfigured instantly. Second command, he wrote a small script, just a few lines. It adjusted the priority queue to prevent the deadlock loop. One of the engineers leaned in closer. Wait, is he writing that in real time? Another whispered back, no way that works. Third command, he disabled the new feature through a hidden flag. No full rollback needed, just a clean cut. The system didn't even hiccup. For 10 seconds, the monitoring graphs went wild. CPU spiked to 100%. Someone shouted, he's making it worse. Adriana stepped forward, hand reaching for the keyboard. Okay, that's enough. Then the graph started dropping. CPU usage fell, 80%, 60, 40. The red error warnings began disappearing. One by one, latency dropped back to normal levels. Transaction success rates climbed, 90%, 95, 98. The system monitoring engineer stared at his screen. Wait, what? He refreshed the dashboard, checked the logs. His voice went from confusion to shock. Latency is stable. Error rate is down to 0.02%. Another engineer pulled up the transaction logs. Payment processing it's running smooth again. No way. Check the cluster health. All green. The room went completely silent. 30 engineers, mouths open, eyes fixed on the screens. Ethan ran one final diagnostic check. 10 seconds. Then he stood up. He pushed the chair back in, stepped away from the console. System stable for now, but this architecture will crash again if you don't fix the root cause. Nobody spoke. Adriana stared at the dashboard, then at Ethan, then back at the dashboard. How did you? One of the senior engineers found his voice. Where did you learn to do that? Ethan looked at him. I didn't learn it. I built it. Confusion spread across the room. What do you mean you built it? Ethan sighed, tired, not just from tonight. The core technology NovaCore is using, it came from a startup I worked at 5 years ago. I was the lead architect. The room froze. You're lying. Check the acquisition records. One of the engineers pulled up the company's technology history on his laptop. His face went pale. Oh my God, there was a startup acquisition in 2020. CodeFlow Systems. Another engineer leaned over. That's where the original payment protocol came from. The first engineer scrolled further. Lead architect on the original prototype was... He stopped, looked up at Ethan. Ethan Cole. The room exploded in whispers. Adriana grabbed her phone, pulled up HR records, found Ethan's employee file. Her hands were shaking slightly. Previous employment, CodeFlow Systems, lead systems architect. She looked up at him, voice barely steady. You're the Cole in Cole Protocol? Ethan nodded once. That's why I knew exactly what was wrong. I designed the foundation you've been building on. Then why are you working maintenance? His jaw tightened, pain flickered across his face. My wife got sick, cancer, stage 4. The treatments were experimental, expensive. Insurance didn't cover it. The room went even quieter. I sold my shares in CodeFlow for a fraction of what they were worth. Desperate sale. Used everything to pay medical bills. He paused. She died anyway. Someone in the back whispered, Jesus. Ethan continued. After she passed, the new investors restructured the company, brought in their own team. I was let go. They fired the lead architect. They didn't need me anymore. They had the code, the patents, the architecture documentation. He looked around the room at all the engineers who'd laughed at him an hour ago. So I took whatever work I could find, contract maintenance, night shifts, anything to pay rent and keep my daughter fed. Adriana's face had gone from shock to something else. Shame. Regret. You've been here 6 months. 7. And nobody knew? Nobody asked. One of the younger engineers spoke up, voice small. I made fun of you earlier when you tried to help. Ethan shrugged. You weren't the first, won't be the last. The senior engineer who told him to stay in his lane stepped forward. Man, I'm sorry, I didn't know. You shouldn't need to know someone's resume to treat them with respect. That hit hard. Several people looked at the floor. Adriana set her phone down, composed herself. You just saved this company from $100 million disaster. I saved the system. There's a difference. What difference? Ethan looked her directly in the eyes. A system is just code. A company is people. And your company just spent the last 3 hours treating me like I was invisible. The truth of that statement hung in the air like smoke. Adriana opened her mouth, closed it. She had no response. One of the engineers broke the silence. The board is calling. They want a status update. Adriana picked up her phone, looked at the screen, then at the engineering team. Tell them the crisis is resolved. Full report in the morning. She turned to Ethan. Can we talk? Privately? Ethan glanced at the clock. Almost 3 in the morning. I need to pick up my daughter in 4 hours. This won't take long. He nodded slowly. Adriana gestured toward the conference room. As they walked, every engineer in the room watched, some with respect, some with guilt, all with a new understanding. The maintenance guy they'd ignored for 7 months had just done what none of them could, and he'd done it in under 3 minutes. Behind them, one of the junior engineers pulled up Ethan's employee file, started reading his background. MIT graduate, master's in computer science, published papers on distributed systems. Another engineer leaned over. 14 patents, most sold to Novacore in the acquisition. He designed half the infrastructure we use every day. And we treated him like... The engineer couldn't finish. The shame was too heavy. The senior architect who'd mocked Ethan sat at his desk, stared at the green dashboard. Stable. Perfect. All because of the man he'd dismissed. He'd spent years building at his reputation. And in 3 minutes, someone he'd looked down on had made him look like an amateur. The conference room felt cold. Glass walls. City lights below. Just Adriana and Ethan. She sat across from him. Hands folded. Professional mask back on. The board sent an email thanking the engineering team for their excellent work resolving the crisis. Ethan said nothing. Your name wasn't mentioned. I noticed. Adriana looked down. I'm changing that. First thing tomorrow. Full public acknowledgement. That's not why I'm here. I know. Silence stretched between them. She continued. After you left CodeFlow, after they pushed you out, I was one of the investors who benefited from that acquisition. Ethan's jaw tightened slightly. He hadn't known that. I made millions from your work, your code, your architecture, and I never knew your name until tonight. She looked directly at him. I want to make you chief systems architect, full authority to redesign Novacore's infrastructure. Whatever you need, whatever team you want. Ethan leaned back. In equity? 20,000 shares, vesting over 4 years. That's generous. It's less than you deserve. He was quiet for a moment. You're trying to buy me, just like they did before. Adriana shook her head. No, before they bought your work and threw you away. I'm offering you ownership, control, respect. Respect isn't something you offer, it's something you show. She absorbed that, nodded slowly. You're right. Ethan pulled something from his shirt pocket, a folded piece of paper, worn at the edges. He unfolded it carefully, showed it to her. A child's drawing, a stick figure man surrounded by computers and wires. Caption in crayon, Daddy's brain machine. My daughter drew this last week. She thinks I'm a genius because I can fix her tablet when it freezes. His voice softened. Tonight, when everyone was laughing, I thought about her, about what she'd think if she saw people treating her dad like he was invisible. Adriana looked at the drawing. Something shifted in her expression. I don't need a big title, Ethan continued. I don't need my name on a wall. I just need to know that when Mia asks what I do, I can tell her the truth without feeling ashamed. What's the truth? That I help build things that matter, that I'm valued for what I can do, not what degree is on my wall or what clothes I wear. Adriana was quiet for a long moment. I want to make you that offer, the position, the equity, all of it. And I want to do something else, something I should have done 7 months ago. She stood up, extended her hand. I want to apologize, not as a CEO, as a human being who was wrong. Ethan looked at her hand, then at her face. You know what changed tonight? You saved the company. No, you saw me. For the first time in 7 months, someone looked at me and actually saw me. He stood, shook her hand. I'll think about your offer, but first I need to pick up my daughter. Adriana nodded. Take all the time you need. As Ethan walked toward the door, she called out, Cole? He turned. Tomorrow morning, company-wide meeting. I'm telling everyone what really happened tonight. No filtered version, no corporate spin, the truth. Ethan studied her face, saw something genuine there. Then maybe we can talk again after that. He left. The door closed softly behind him. Adriana stood alone in the conference room, staring at her reflection in the glass. For the first time in years, she felt like she'd actually learned something. 3 days later, NovaCore Auditorium, every employee gathered. The screen behind Adriana showed a single slide. What really happened? She stepped to the microphone. No notes, just raw honesty. 3 nights ago, our system nearly collapsed. We would have lost everything. Contracts, reputation, possibly the company itself. The room was silent. 30 engineers worked for hours trying to fix it, all of them brilliant, and each of them giving everything they had. She paused, and none of them could solve it. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The person who saved us wasn't in that engineering team. He wasn't in any leadership meeting. He wasn't on any org chart that mattered. She looked toward the back, made eye contact with Ethan. He was the man we called when the air conditioning broke, the guy who fixed our cable connections, the contractor we walked past every day without seeing. More murmurs, people turning to look. Ethan Cole is the lead architect who designed the original system we built this company on. He's published, he's patented, he's brilliant. Her voice grew stronger. And we treated him like he was invisible because he wore a maintenance uniform instead of a suit. The room fell completely silent. Please welcome the man who saved NovaCore, Ethan Cole. Ethan stood from the back row, walked down the aisle. Simple clothes, clean but modest. But next to him, holding his hand, was Mia. She was wearing her favorite address, the one with robots on it, eyes wide, taking in everything. When Ethan reached the stage, Adriana stepped aside, handed him the microphone. He looked out at hundreds of faces, some curious, some ashamed, some genuinely respectful. I'm not giving a speech, he said. I just want to say one thing. He knelt down, eye level with Mia. Sweetheart, remember when you asked me if I was really smart like the people on TV? She nodded. I told you that smart isn't about fancy words or big offices. It's about solving problems, about helping people, about doing the right thing even when nobody's watching. Mia smiled, Ujin bright. Did you save the company, Daddy? I fixed a system. The company is saving itself by learning to see people better. He stood, looked back at the audience. Genius isn't about being the loudest voice in the room. Sometimes it's the quiet hands that step in when everyone else has given up. He handed the microphone back to Adriana, started to walk off. Then Mia's voice rang out across the auditorium. "That's my daddy!" The room erupted in applause, genuine, thunderous, overdue. Ethan scooped her up, carried her down the aisle, and for the first time in years, he felt like the man his daughter had always believed he was. A genius. Not because of a title, but because he never stopped being exactly who he was. Subscribe if you believe real genius doesn't need a title, just a chance.